Hi guys, welcome back to Contest Prep University. This is Dr. Kori Propst, and we're going to talk about how to manage pre-stage anxiety. Probably one of my favorite topics. When you are peaking clients and you're looking at photos 3 times a day, you notice trends, and then show day comes, and a lot of times they'll look a little different, maybe a little watery. You can tell they're just nervous and anxious, and a lot of that is because of anxiety, releasing glucose, right? So the more we can manage this, not only the better we can perform physically, but we can just mentally perform better. And I think just enjoy the experience more. If you're anxious, we tend not to enjoy anxiety unless people are mismatching the emotions of love and anxiety, then they enjoy it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think for pre-stage anxiety, what are some tips from you that you have?
Yeah, well, I appreciate, Adam, that you mentioned that there's both a physiological response that occurs and there's the psychological response that occurs. And typically it's the psychological response to some circumstance or some situation. And in this case, it's, I have to get on stage now. And today's the day. And whatever that self-talk is and whatever those thoughts sound like, they're going to influence and impact how we feel and what emotion we experience. So if we're looking around backstage and we start doing some comparing in our minds, like, oh my God, that girl looks amazing, I should have dieted harder. And then we start to think about all the things that we didn't do or that we did wrong and where we failed. And the self-talk becomes like, I shouldn't be here, or I'm not good enough to do this. Like maybe I should have called this off, or maybe I should have dieted longer or started sooner, whatever it is. If it's negative like that, that can push us into the physiological response of anxiety, of tension, and where we feel like we need to protect, where we feel like we're threatened in some way. And that prompts a whole cascade of hormones. And just like you said, glucose can start to leak from, inside the muscle into outside, and you can look soft and squishy because now it's between the skin and the muscle.
Yeah.
Not awesome, because we need to look sharp. We need to look tight when we get on stage. But so in terms of tips, the first one that I would say is to really begin and do this before you get on stage, guys. Do this before you get backstage. Start to really become acquainted with and begin observing and monitoring what your inner dialogue sounds like. What are you saying to yourself? What's the tone that voice is? What are the words being used? What's the language? And once you have a good sort of idea for what that self-talk sounds like, you can begin to respond to it differently and or change it completely. And begin to, what I would do, if you were my coach, Adam, I would be listening very intently to what you're telling me, how you're telling those things to me, the tone of voice that you're using, and that's what I would be mimicking in my head. Because we don't want to be our internal critic. We want to be our internal, compassionate, kind, demonstrative in terms of like determination and hope and belief coach for ourselves. So that's where I would start. The other things are probably pretty well known by a lot of competitors, but prepare. Have like multiples of everything that you take with you to that show, because inevitably you're going to lose something, or something is going to break, or you're not going to be able to find that one thing. And so that's what I did when I was competing. The other thing that I did too was I would visualize beforehand, Adam. And that's, for me, it was, I would do this before I would go to bed. I would envision the entire process, not just like going on stage and walking on stage and my posing and my routine and all of those things, but like from right now, while I'm prepping and while I'm preparing food and while I'm practicing my walk and while I'm, you know, moving to the music of my routine, I envisioned and imagined all of those things all the way up to the moment that I stand on stage and through the moments where I was performing. Because that helps us prepare the mind and prepare the body for what we're going into. And we feel comfortable when there's something familiar. So if we've imagined it repeatedly, it's like, oh, I know this. I got this. Like I've played it in my mind like 10 million times.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I had meditated about almost every piece about competing, except I forgot one small detail. It's very small, but it very much struck me backstage.
Okay.
When we walked upstairs to get to stage left, I did not think of walking from behind the curtain to wherever they were going to position me to. And I thought, oh my God, I'm actually like doing this on a stage. And I just said, okay, well, I've got to take some deep breaths and calm down just a little bit.
Yeah.
And, you know, luckily that's just a fragment of it, but something seemed very unplanned to me, just going from stage left to actually being on stage.
I love that you mentioned that, Adam, because there is typically going to be something that we didn't anticipate. I recall that too, because every venue is a little bit different and you're going to enter on a different side and they may have you walk to a different area of the stage in a different direction than you practiced. So going to that pre-show meeting is really important because that's probably where you're going to find out some of those details. But like you said, there are going to be unknowns, and being able to, again, monitor the self-talk, like, I will be okay. No one else knew this stuff either. Like, I'm not the only one who was like surprised by this.
Right.
And then those deep breaths are super, super important because that's really going to make a difference in terms of our physiology. Taking a really big, deep diaphragmatic breath in for maybe like 4 seconds, holding at the top for 2, and then extending that exhale actually activates that rest and digest and relaxation branch of the nervous system. And the one other thing I will say is a lot of times, Adam, people, because they'll confuse excitement with anxiety. And it's the same physiological response in the body. Same exact thing happens. And so it really makes a difference, like how we label it. Oh my God, I'm so scared. Oh my God, I'm so anxious. I'm so stressed out. Or, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is going to be so fun.
It's funny because I thought of a different client each scenario you just mentioned there.
Yeah. And so I think as coaches, we have a responsibility to kind of listen to how our clients are talking about it and what words they're using. I'm really scared. I'm stressed out about this. I'm super anxious about how I'm going to look, how I'm going to come in. Okay, maybe let's flip that. And let's just see how you feel when you flip it. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. Like, there's going to be unknowns, but I'm going in. Oh, I'm super curious about what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel the difference when I do that for sure.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned the unknown too, because I think that's just the scariest part for people. That's why we, obviously fear death and fear the dark, because it takes anything knowing about anything away from us.
The uncertainty of it. Yeah. And you consider the fact that, okay, we're physique competitors, we're bodybuilders. Like, you're a nut job if you say that we don't kind of have an excessive need for control.
Right.
Right? So the unknown, like if that's thrown at us, for most of us, it's like, put on the brakes. Oh my God, what just happened? Like, because I mean, we're trying to plan everything to an absolute T, meet our macros perfectly. And so it is really good practice to, I mean, even in normal everyday life, when something happens that we don't necessarily expect, to kind of practice having a different sort of response than putting on the brakes and freaking out.
Absolutely. And then other things, I think just focusing on what's important now is always what I told my athletes. So how tan you are, you know, getting a good pump backstage, maybe just running through your posing. So doing something with that anxiety or fear can be helpful as well.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Adam, because that emotion, just emotion in general, is energy, and that's moving in our bodies. So if we just stop, for a lot of us, that causes that emotion to just build and build and rise in the intensity to, you know, become stronger and stronger. If we move, it kind of allows that energy to move to and move through us and begin to dissipate. It's kind of like if you skip a rock in the lake. Initially, like the waves are pretty big, but then they become, the lake becomes more serene again and flat and calm. Same thing happens with our emotion, but we can help ourselves that way by moving. Yeah.
Very good. I think this was perfect. This will help so many competitors. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, great.
So thank you for your time, and come join us for the next episode on Contest Prep University.
Thanks, guys.